Welcome to the public workshop on the Department of Toxic Substances Control, or DTSC's, proposal to list toluene in nail products as a priority product. My name is Carrie Rasmussen, and I'm a public participation specialist, and I will be facilitating this workshop this morning. Let me take this moment to welcome those of you that are joining us via the webcast. On behalf of DTSC, I would like to welcome all of you and thank you all so much for participating in today's workshop. The workshop presentation slides are available on the Safer Consumer Products website, known as SCP Workshops and Events webpage. The workshop will be recorded and later posted to the SCP website. Our distinguished panel members include Dr. Meredith Williams, SCP Deputy Director and Acting DTSC Director. Carl Palmer, Branch Chief and Acting Deputy Director for the SCP Program. Andre Agalsi, Supervisor and Senior Environmental Scientist. Dr. Eric Shulo, Staff Toxicologist and Presenter. Dr. Dichle Yurdomska, Senior Hazardous Substances Engineer and Acting Team Lead. Today's program will be as follows. First, we'll start off by a welcome by Dr. Meredith Williams, followed by an introduction by Carl Palmer. This will be followed by a brief presentation on the draft product chemical profile on nail products containing toluene by Eric Shulo. Next, we will take clarifying questions from the audience. This will be followed by public comments. If you have a pre-printed comment document, you may turn that in, or if you are online, seeing this via the web, you may email us at saferconsumerproducts@dtsc.ca.gov. This will be the time to make all of your comments, and if you turn them in, then we'll put them in the correct order, and we will call you up or we will bring a microphone to you to read it into the microphone. This workshop will adjourn when there are no additional comments, or at 12 o'clock noon, whichever comes first. Now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Meredith Williams to give the welcome address.
Thank you, Carrie. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us remotely or in the room. We're very excited about today. In fact, my comments are going to be extremely brief because I'm very eager to get on to the matter at hand. It seems like maybe it's wait and hurry up. The department has been looking at nail salon products since 2012. And so it's a long-standing area of concern for us. And Carl Palmer will give a little bit of the history of the work of the department. We're just excited to get on to the next step of providing protections against some of the problems associated with these products and to apply the Safer Consumer Products framework again to a different sector and a different set of products. So without further ado, I'm actually going to come right over to Carl.
Thank you, Meredith. Again, thanks everyone for being here and being online. Yeah, I was thinking this weekend about our nail product journey at DTSC, and as Meredith said, we've been working on it for quite a while. And actually, this weekend I was listening to Secretary Blumenfeld's podcast, Hot Chip Earth, which featured the issue of nail products and nail salons. And in that podcast, I was reminded that probably 9 or 10 years ago, I attended a meeting in the Bay Area that I was invited from the Healthy Nail Salon Collaborative, and Julia Liao on the podcast was relating the story from that meeting. And at face value, the meeting was to get industry and advocacy folks and government folks to talk about issues related to product safety and workers. But the highlight or rather the low light of the meeting was when 2 representatives from a couple of nail product companies got into a debate about whose products were safer. And what that culminated in was these 2 gentlemen getting up and each literally drinking their products to show how safe it was, which was shocking to most of us there. But what it really did was, at the time, it highlighted that there really was an incredible lack of data and information, scientific study, and that was accessible to government, to the public, about what was in nail products and what the potential problems were there. So soon thereafter, stimulated by that meeting, the department did a short look at some products in the market because some of them were advertised as being 3 free or 5 free from some specific chemicals. And we took a quick look at that and found that there were some inconsistencies. Concurrently, the legislature was passing the green chemistry law, and we were in the process of adopting our safer consumer products regulations. And so, interestingly, 5 years ago today, we announced our first 3 products that we would be focusing on in our safer consumer products regulation. And as you know, the intent of our regulations is to put a framework out there that requires manufacturers do thorough analysis of alternatives to products that have potential to cause harm to people and the environment. And so part of the challenge in this sector is, much as it was 10 years ago, there's still a lack of complete information. We have a federal cosmetics law that hasn't been meaningfully updated since 1938. We still have challenges in getting good information both to government and to consumers. So in furthering that process, we're looking at one product chemical combination today, and you're going to hear about some other chemicals we're looking at. And we're happy to continue this dialogue with industry, advocacy, the public, to get good information and get good decisions made to meet our mutual goals of having safe and effective products on the market. So I'm just excited to hear Eric give you a summary of our findings and the information we know. We're a learning organization. It took us a few years to get those first products out the gate. We've got a lot more teed up coming, and we're going to continue to learn. So today, we're hoping to share with you our information and hear from you as well, and also here in our formal comment period, which closes on April 1st. If you don't have an opportunity to give us input today, please take the opportunity to send us comments before April 1st. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Eric, and we'll get started on the details. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Welcome for being here today and to allow us the opportunity to announce DTSC's proposal to list toluene in nail products as a priority product. The Safer Consumer Product regulations provide a 4-step process, with the second step being the evaluation and identification of priority products. In this step, there are 2 primary determinants in recommending prioritization. First, that there is potential for exposure to the candidate chemical in the product, and second, that 1 or more exposures have the potential to contribute to or cause significant or widespread adverse impacts. How we meet those criteria are specified in the Safer Consumer Product Framework regulations, and reaching this point of the priority product phase is the result of significant work and research across a wide field of areas. Here is the overview of today's presentation. We will begin by discussing our recommendation for prioritizing toluene in nail products, and we will provide an overview of all our efforts concerning nail products. The technical basis for this proposal has been fully described in our Toluene Profile, which is available at our CalSafer website. This is a draft discussion, as we do want to make sure to consider your input. We have specific questions that were provided along with the document that we'd like addressed, and our plan is to incorporate that feedback into the profile and other documentation as appropriate as we prepare for rulemaking. I'd like to walk you through some of the key elements of the profile. We defined our scope of products in 2 main categories, the first of which is nail coatings. Nail coatings are defined as any clear or colored paint, polish, lacquer, enamel, or gel product marketed or sold for application to the fingernails or toenails. And listed here are the types of products that would fall under this category. The second product category defined in the profile are nail polish thinners. They are defined as any liquid product that is marketed or sold for the use of reducing viscosity of nail coatings. They may be marketed for the use of increasing the fluidity or restoring the consistency of nail coatings. Now that the products have been defined, the chemical toluene can be defined as clear, colorless, and most importantly, volatile, meaning it's capable of escaping from the liquid phase and into the vapor or indoor air. It is used in coatings to suspend the color to form a smooth finish across the nail and to evenly adhere polished nails. The chemical toluene is listed on 9 of the 23 authoritative lists for hazard or exposure. The 9 lists are presented on this slide in an abbreviated format, but I encourage those interested to explore the CalSafer site, the candidate chemical database, and the toluene profile for a more detailed description. But to summarize, the presence of toluene on these lists indicates the well-established nature of its hazard traits. That is to say, its neurological, developmental, respiratory, and dermal toxicity are well-established endpoints that have been observed in the scientific literature as a result of toluene exposure. Please, again, see the toluene profile for the complete list of hazard traits and studies. I would like to take a few moments to describe these hazards in more detail. Neurotoxicity is the principal hazard trait described for toluene on 5 of the authoritative lists. This is important in that it provides a high degree of confidence in this hazard for toluene. This is in line with the scientific literature which demonstrates neurotoxicity in human exposures in animal models. The California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or OEHA, has reviewed the literature with respect to toluene and created a chronic or long-term reference exposure level of 300 micrograms per meter cubed for toluene in the indoor air. This REL is the concentration level at or below which no adverse health effects are anticipated when continuously inhaled over a person's lifetime. Some examples of potential neurotoxic health effects include dizziness, fatigue, headache, and decreased manual dexterity or motor function. Toluene is also capable of developmental toxicity and is listed as such according to 3 authoritative lists. Human epidemiological studies have reported higher risk for cosmetologists to have children with low birth weight compared to other work sectors or the general population. First, it should be noted that cosmetologists are defined as both hair and nail salon workers for the sake of these studies. Second, the effects reported in these studies were not attributed to toluene exposure alone. However, it is noteworthy that developmental toxicity was observed, given that toluene is a developmental toxicant present in some nail products. In other words, we are not saying that those who use these products will suffer from these effects. Rather, we are proposing these lines of evidence to manufacturers to propose safer alternatives. Developmental toxicity has also been observed in studies investigating the intentional abuse of toluene, and this hazard trait has been well documented in animal models that have also consistently observed low birth weight endpoints in offspring. Toluene is also capable of respiratory and dermal toxicity. Studies have shown that toluene exposure results in respiratory tract irritation when inhaled. It is important to point out that the hazard traits described so far are primarily a result of inhalation exposure and represent the exposure pathway of primary importance and toxicological significance. However, toluene is absorbed through the skin, and skin irritation is possible in the event of accidental spills or dermal exposure. This concludes the hazard trait summary for toluene, but again, I encourage those interested to read the toluene profile for the complete list of hazard traits and studies. Having presented the hazard trait information, it is important to describe the exposure characteristics for toluene in more detail, and it starts in the markets. Nail products and salon services are extremely popular, with approximately $8.5 billion spent on nail services in the United States in 2016. More than 100 million women in the United States use nail products annually, and this number is only expected to increase moving into the future. In California, there are more than 9,000 nail salons and approximately 130,000 licensed manicurists and 300,000 cosmetologists. One piece of information that we received when researching the market presence of toluene in nail products was that they were on the decline, and toluene was being phased out of nail products. We did find evidence, however, that toluene is still found in a number of nail products. For example, a 2016 Food and Drug Administration study detected toluene in 26 out of the 34 products that they investigated. DTSC's 2012 sampling study found toluene in products as well. It has been reported as an ingredient in greater than 40 nail coatings and 1 nail polish thinner, according to the California Safe Cosmetics Program database. Mintel's Global New Product Database identified 43 nail coating products introduced to the United States retail market and 930 worldwide since 2006. Also, the Environmental Working Group Skin Deep Cosmetics database lists 5 nail products that contain toluene. As mentioned previously, the inhalation of indoor air is the most significant exposure route with regards for the potential to cause adverse impacts and is the primary pathway that is being discussed today. The populations that may be exposed to toluene-containing nail products include nail salon workers, nail salon patrons, nail product consumers, children, pregnant women, and their fetuses. In the United States, 97% of nail technicians are female, and a majority are of childbearing age. In California, nail technicians are primarily of Vietnamese descent, many of whom face workplace safety challenges due to language barriers, limited education on chemical exposure from products, and limited availability and use of personal protective equipment, or PPE. Combined with the fact that they are primarily females of childbearing age, they represent a unique sensitive subpopulation and may be especially vulnerable from exposure. In addition, their exposure time should be considered greater than a typical 40-hour work week or 8-hour workday, as a majority of technicians work extended daily or weekly shifts. Children that accompany their parents to work are of concern as well, for there is evidence that children of nail salon workers will accompany their parents to the workplace and may be exposed over the course of a work shift or work week. Children are more sensitive to exposures and therefore represent a sensitive subpopulation of concern as well. So exposure to toluene is affected by a number of factors, including the route of exposure, whether it is inhalation of indoor air, dermal exposure, or accidental ingestion, the number of nail products used per day, the toluene concentration in the nail product used, the proper use or availability of personal protective equipment. In this illustration, it might be best if our example were wearing gloves, for example. The size of the room's ventilation, the weather, the number of hours or days worked per week, and the number of clients serviced per day. One study showed that the indoor air concentration of toluene in nail salons was positively correlated to the number of clients served in a given day, meaning that as the number of clients increased, the indoor air concentration of toluene also increased. Here's a figure presenting academic studies that have actively investigated the presence of toluene in indoor air at nail salons as an indicator of potential exposure to occupants. The maximum levels shown represent the upper ends of the concentrations detected in the indoor air. The horizontal line represents the previously described OEHA exposure level of 300 micrograms per meter cubed, the threshold level at which no adverse impacts are anticipated over a lifetime of exposure. The first bar in this figure represents a study that detected toluene in 6 out of 8 Los Angeles area nail salons over a 4-hour duration. The second and third bars come from a study where toluene was investigated in 30 nail salons throughout California. The second bar shows the amount of toluene that was detected in the indoor air, while the third bar represents toluene that was detected in the breathing zone of nail salon workers. The last two bars represent additional studies that also detected toluene in excess of the AWIHA exposure level. I would also like to point out that there are additional studies that have detected toluene in nail salons, and that all references, studies, and information provided in this presentation are readily available in our toluene profile. So, once again, our current phase is proposing toluene in nail products for prioritization, which is the primary purpose of our talk today. But our next broad step is to ask manufacturers to perform alternatives analysis where the full evaluation of potential safer alternatives will take place. DTSC has summarized some readily available information on the alternatives to toluene used in nail products as they pertain to their functional use and their associated hazard traits, but has made no determination about their safety relative to toluene. By no means is this a complete or necessarily accurate list, rather a starting point for manufacturers in their evaluation of alternatives with respect to function, hazard, and exposure. In summary, the program has met the two requirements in proposing a priority product. First, that there is potential for exposure in the candidate chemical, in this case toluene, from nail coatings and thinners. Second, that there is potential for toluene exposure from these products to contribute to or cause significant or widespread adverse impacts. Regarding exposure, evidence has been presented that toluene is in nail coatings and thinners and that it has the capability to volatilize into the indoor air. This is supported by studies that have measured toluene in the indoor air of nail salons. Regarding the second requirement, to cause or contribute to significant or widespread adverse impacts, evidence has been presented that shows toluene's hazard traits have been well established according to the scientific literature and authoritative bodies, and that nail salon workers and their child or fetus represent a sensitive subpopulation with respect to toluene inhalation exposure. This concludes the portion of the presentation dedicated to the proposed prioritization of toluene in nail products. And I would now like to take the opportunity to provide the audience with an overview of our other efforts related to nail products and salons in California. Here is a summary of the other nail-related topics that we are pursuing as a program. We are actively researching a number of other chemicals that may potentially be in nail products and capable of adverse impacts. We have been working in collaboration with the Healthy Nail Salon Recognition Program in the creation of a statewide guidance. We are initiating a nail product study that is investigating chemical presence in nail products sold for use in California. And we will be conducting an information or data call-in with the industry in the future in an effort to address data gaps and uncertainty concerning our research efforts. Here is a list of other chemicals in nail products that have been actively researched and evaluated since the culmination of our previous workshop approximately 2 years ago. First, let's start with formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a volatile chemical with clearly established hazard traits. It is a carcinogen, liver toxicant, and respiratory irritant. It is used in nail hardeners to strengthen nails, and is allowable by the Food and Drug Administration in nail hardeners at concentrations less than 5%. Formaldehyde is widespread in the environment with many ambient sources, such as old building materials. This complicates study design and indoor air measurements, as comparable detections of formaldehyde are often found in control samples. We are not recommending formaldehyde in nail hardeners for prioritization at this time, but we are following this active area of research with the intention to gather additional data as new models of indoor air inhalation exposure are developed. Pardon me. The next is dibutyl phthalate, a reproductive and developmental toxicant that is used in nail polish as a plasticizer. From what we have learned, it has been mostly phased out of nail products in favor of other alternatives. The Mintel database, which is a database that provides information on products introduced to the market that contain a particular chemical, identified no new polishes containing DBP since 2012. and as a result, we're not recommending it for prioritization at this time. We are still actively investigating its presence in products by following relevant marketing databases, as well as our own planned sampling study. Methyl methacrylate is a respiratory and dermal toxicant that is used in acrylic nails, polish, and gel products. The Food and Drug Administration and the California Board of Barbering and Cosmetology prohibit the use of MMA-containing nail products in salons. In spite of this, MMA has been detected in the indoor air of salons. It is also allowable for sale in the retail market for consumer use. We are currently researching this chemical and its products and plan to take the appropriate action once we collect more information. Triphenyl phosphate is a suspected developmental toxicant, endocrine disruptor, and obesogen. It is only listed by one authoritative source, according to the Safer Consumer Products Candidate Chemical Database, which is the California Biomonitoring List. This points to a significant amount of uncertainty regarding its hazard traits and its potential to contribute to or cause adverse impacts. It is widely used in nail polish as a plasticizer and is a known hazard to aquatic organisms. But it is not persistent in the environment and is present at much lower concentrations than those observed to cause impacts to said organisms. We are currently still following this emerging active area of research with new studies that are coming out regularly and with some large-scale studies planned for the future in different sectors of academia. Methyl ethyl ketone is a neurological, respiratory, and developmental toxicant. Adverse impacts resulting from exposure to MEK have been observed only under very high dose exposure scenarios, such as pure 100% MEK exposure or cases involving non-salon occupational exposures. It is used in nail polish and thinners, but the Mintel database shows that only 1% of nail products from 2008 to 2017 contained MEK. There are a few studies that have investigated the presence of MEK in indoor air of nail salons in the United States, and all detections were well below risk-based regulatory thresholds. As a result, MEK is not recommended for prioritization at this time due to insufficient evidence that it can cause or contribute to adverse impacts based on existing exposure and hazard data. We will continue to monitor the continuing use of it in products and any potential increases in exposure. N-methylpyridone, or NMP, is a carcinogen, reproductive, and developmental toxicant. It was primarily used in polish removers, but has been phased out in the European Union. Also, the Mintel database shows only one NMP-containing nail product in the last 5 years. However, a recent study by the Food and Drug Administration showed NMP in base coats, gels, and thinners at low concentrations. Based on this study and other uncertainties, we plan on continuing additional research to determine its potential presence in other nail products. In addition to those chemicals just described, we are also investigating and researching the following chemicals in nail products due to their high frequency of use, the fact that they are all on our candidate chemical list, or in the case of diethyl hexyl phthalate, was detected in a recent Harvard study that sampled nail products. Along with these research efforts, the department has also been involved with the creation of a statewide guidance for the Healthy Nail Salon Recognition Program pursuant to Assembly Bill 2125 in 2018. This guidance is intended for local governmental agencies in California that create voluntary healthy nail salon recognition programs under their jurisdiction. It was established to prevent, minimize, or reduce nail salon workers and their customers' exposure to toxic chemicals in nail products. And even if one is not involved in the program, the guidance can serve as a source of information and best practices to any interested parties. Included here is a hyperlink to the guidance. DTSC has also designed a laboratory study investigating the presence and concentrations of candidate chemicals and other chemicals of interest in retail and professional use nail products. This study is a follow-up to DTSC's 2012 nail product study that evaluated whether ingredients on labels of nail products were misreported and aims to support the identification of priority products and the improved characterization of chemical ingredients in nail products. This study really highlights DTSC's continued commitment to nail product safety that began over 7 years ago and continues to evolve through stakeholder engagement and active research as we move into the future. Also planned is a program-initiated data or information call-in. The Safer Consumer Products regulations give the department authority to conduct an information call-in, which applies to all manufacturers, importers, assemblers, and retailers of a specific chemical or product or group of chemicals or products. The data call-in is a tool that we plan to implement moving forward with the intention to fill data gaps related to nail products and to improve our understanding of nail chemical product combinations and to reduce the research and lag time of our efforts. The data call-in truly is another tool at our disposal to help us in engaging stakeholders to obtain the information from the experts in the nail product profession. So the next steps for the program are summarized here on this slide. We hope to actively solicit public comments on the Toluene profile. The profile is currently on the CalSafer website, and the 30-day public comment period is now open. We hope to receive comments before it closes on April 1st, 2019. We also plan to continue researching chemicals of interest in nail products. We are preparing for our analytical lab study that is currently underway, as well as the information call-in in the future. DTSC is soliciting comments on the Toluene in nail products profile and has some questions seeking input from stakeholders. We ask that you please visit the CalSafer website to provide comments and address these questions. Thank you for your time and attention. I would like to now open the floor and webcast attendees to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Eric. This section of is really focused on getting clarifying questions or questions for Eric on what he's presented. We do have a more formal public comment period if you want to give us a comment, but this is a time for you to ask questions about what Eric presented.
Thank you. I'm Catherine Porter with the California Healthy Nail Salon Collaborative. We're the organization that's been very involved with Carl Palmer and DTSC around nail products, and we're co-sponsors of AB 2125. I have a couple questions, one having to do with the scope and the other having to do with the issue of alternatives. My question about scope is, you talked about polish or nail coverings, and you talked about thinners. But I think this names nail products generally. So does this, will this rule apply to, say, for example, artificial nails and other nail products like that? So that's one question having to do with scope. The other issue has to do with alternatives. And you're mentioning methyl ethyl ketone and that it's not a priority at this time for DTSC. So I'm a little concerned that there is potential for industry to substitute out toluene or substitute out, use MEK, methyl ethyl ketone, instead of toluene. We have concerns about methyl ethyl ketone. Both toluene and methyl ethyl ketone, not only in potentially being ingredients within nail polishes, are actually sold as a freestanding chemical to use as thinners. And so I would hope that industry does not have the opportunity to replace toluene, for example, with methyl ethyl ketone or any other chemical that is on the candidate chemical list. I suppose that's more a comment than a question, but if you could clarify the alternatives issue and the scope question.
Eric, can you maybe pull back your slide that has the scope of the product definition? Okay, so, and chime in anyone on the team if I get this wrong, but essentially we define what we call nail coatings, and the bullets on this slide show the subset of specific product types that meet that definition. So if there's something that's not on that list that you think should be, that if there's evidence that they contain toluene and you think it should be, that's the kind of comment we would appreciate you giving us, and supporting documentation that shows that why that is a concern. But that's the scope of it right there. I'm not sure if you have a follow-up question.
The thinners on the next slide.
Yeah, and then the next page, the next slide highlights that thinners are a different product.
We're lumping them under nail product.
Right. So there's sort of a hierarchy here. And to your second question, a couple of things. One, that what we identify as a priority product, we will subsequently, once we finalize this process, we'll go through rulemaking to adopt the formal priority product listing, and then manufacturers who sell into California that product specifically have to go through an alternatives analysis process. During that process, the manufacturers will tell us what they're going to do about the presence of toluene and what alternatives they're going to consider. So you're concerned about MEK being a possibility. The manufacturer would be required to highlight that that's a possibility that they were evaluating, and if they chose to move that, they would have to document why they think that's a safer alternative, at which case then we would evaluate it, because we have the opportunity, once the AAs are completed, to say, yes, that works, or no, that's not adequate.
I guess it feels like at this point in time, you're implicitly saying that MEK is safer than toluene. That's what I'm getting in the implication. So that's concerning that I'm kind of hearing that. And the other issue is, if we were to say we think it should clarify that artificial nails should be in this group, the collaborative, as a small nonprofit organization, are even in a worse off position to know about what chemicals are in products than, say, a state agency like DTSC. So I don't know that we would be able to also document that we know for sure toluene is in artificial nail products. We would hope that that would be part of the work of DTSC. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Let me address your earlier point on MEK, is that we're not saying that MEK is safer than toluene. We're not making that determination. I think primarily we didn't find evidence that MEK is being used in nail products, and not to say that it couldn't be as an alternative. And then I also want to highlight that, as Eric highlighted, we look at the information we have available, and a lot of that is with a different framework. It's a risk-based framework, risk analysis. So a lot of the data is in that form. That doesn't necessarily translate to say that just because a risk assessment found that it wasn't a problem, that doesn't preclude us from still looking at it, and we still do. But we take all those factors into account, its use or lack of use, its the data we have supporting it as a problem or a potential problem or not. So we're not making that determination that MEK is a safe alternative.
Hi, good morning. My name is Tom Myers, and I'm with the Personal Care Products Council. We're a trade association, and we represent a lot of cosmetic companies. And thank you, by the way, for your presentation. I had a couple of questions, and it's really around there was a lot of different references to different regulatory levels that have been set already with regard to exposure endpoints. You mentioned, for example, the Prop 65 MADL, the California MCL, the exposure level, the chronic exposure level, the REL from OEHA. Are these levels going to be incorporated in any way or set as part of will they be used to inform the AAT, for example, in the regulation? Does that make sense? Question?
Thanks, Tom. We're not at this time proposing an AAT, so we're citing those levels
sorry. In the regulations, one of the things that we can do when we adopt a priority product listing is to specify an alternatives analysis threshold. Essentially, products that contain the chemical of concern below that concentration would not be subject to the requirements of alternatives analysis. We're not proposing to do that at this time. We're just citing the exceedance of specifically the, what's it called? The REL, excuse me, as documentation that there is potential for exposure that could contribute to or cause significant or widespread adverse impact. At this time, though, we're not considering an AAT.
Okay. Well, seeing no questions in the room, or we haven't had any emailed to us, we'll move on to our formal public comment period. And at this point, if you would like to make a comment, hopefully you've filled out a form and submitted that. I see some forms in the audience being filled out, so if you'd bring those forward, we'll address them in the order we get them. Oh, you got, Zach has them.
Catherine Porter again with the California Healthy Nail Salon Collaborative. First, I want to, on behalf of the collaborative, really thank DTSC for its long history of looking at nail products for this community that's exposed, as it was indicated in the presentation, many hours a day, many days a week, to a whole cocktail of potentially harmful chemicals. As it was also said, a lot of the women that work in this industry, particularly in California, are Vietnamese, and many of them are not native English speakers, so language often becomes a barrier. So we really applaud all the work that DTSC has done and really value our relationship with the agency. I do want to reiterate, though, what we said in our March 2018 written comment, which is that we really encourage the Safer Consumer Products Program to take a broader view when it looks at potential chemicals to target. Instead of one chemical at a time, we really urge a broader look at chemical groups based on function. So for instance, toluene could be in a group of solvents. One of the concerns we have is that by targeting one chemical at a time, and I don't think I'm the first person that has raised this issue, or the first organization, is that because this process moves so slowly, and to not to bring fault for the fact that it moves slowly, but it's a long iterative process. We're concerned that at this point in time, manufacturers could move out toluene, and by the time there is a formal chemical product named, toluene will be out, but potentially replaced with, for instance, methyl ethyl ketone, which I raised concerns about earlier. So we would encourage a broader approach. We also really applaud that you're going to be looking at further research around methyl methacrylate. The issue of artificial nails is huge in the nail salon industry. As you all probably know, artificial nails are sort of the bread and butter of many of these nail salons. So they are loath to pull back on offering those services. So looking more closely at those products used in artificial nails would be greatly appreciated. And again, we thank you very much, but good job, but go broader. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Paula Johnson. I work at the California Department of Public Health in the Safe Cosmetics program. And I just wanted to express my support and for focusing on toluene, and also reiterate your additional concerns for the other chemicals that you mentioned, including formaldehyde and dibutyl phthalate and methyl ethyl ketone. And as Eric cited in his presentation, the our database that collects information from manufacturers of cosmetics. If they're using chemicals that are carcinogens or reproductive or developmental toxicants, they have to report into our database. And as Eric cited, we do have reports of toluene in 53 products, and we also have reports of formaldehyde and dibutyl phthalate. And I also wanted to mention that we did a data call-in to manufacturers, and we've been reviewing over 2,000 formulations of nail products. And so of those, we found the presence of toluene in only 4 products, but I should also say that even though it's over 2,000 formulations, it was only from 7 different companies. So a lot more can be done. You know, there's so many products on the market, so it's really a daunting task, actually. So toluene was in 4 products. We did find methyl ethyl ketone in 6 products, looking at those formulations. We did not find dibutyl phthalate. We did find formaldehyde in 8 products. We're looking at the same chemicals, because I also looked at triphenyl phosphate, and we found that in 476 formulations. Another one that I don't think that you mentioned is not formaldehyde alone, but it's tosylamide formaldehyde resin. And we found that in 299 of the formulations that we looked at. And this is a concern because tosylamide formaldehyde resin emits formaldehyde. And we have also done a lab testing for VOC emissions in a few of the products, not nearly all 2,000, but just in a few. And so we have lab confirmed data that products containing tosylamide formaldehyde resin actually do emit formaldehyde. But that's not the only chemical that emits formaldehyde, because there's also other products that did not contain that ingredient that we found are also emitting formaldehyde. And this was in products. We found a couple of them that are marketed as formaldehyde-free that are also emitting formaldehyde. And so that could be from that formaldehyde resin or other chemicals, not only that resin. And then I also wanted to mention that, there's various forms, I'm sure you're seeing this too, of acrylates in products. And so out of the over 2,000 formulations that we've been looking at, over 1,000 of them contain one or more different types of acrylates. And some are more toxic than others, but it's really hard to evaluate all the different acrylates because there are just so many of them that are coming into the market. But I think that this could be considered, and some types of acrylate could be considered as alternatives to toluene and other solvents too, because as gel products come into the market that are not solvent-based, they're acrylate-based. So that could be considered as an alternative to solvent-based product. So more testing, more research is needed. I'm glad to hear that you're planning this follow-up to your other study to test more products for chemicals. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. Lizette Van Vliet, Breast Cancer Prevention Partners. So very briefly, we're very glad to see you're looking at nail products. We're very encouraged by the way the draft profile is shaping up. We have a couple of specific comments, which is that endocrine disruption didn't seem to get a great deal of attention in the profile. And I'd like to note that a more recent study in Environmental Health Perspectives in 2016, which was a European meta-analysis, found that occupational exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, including toluene, was associated with an increased risk of low birth weight. So that confirms what you've already found, but adds yet another very large cohort study, which was 133,000 mother and baby pairs for this increased risk. And yeah, just to also re-emphasize generally that toluene, if by itself or if combined with other organic solvents, can promote tumor growth and formation. So it's a concern for breast cancer, and even though that might not be the highest hazard that's come under attention, we know that rats that are exposed to the highest concentration of a mix of organic solvents in a particular study have developed mammary tumors, and that any exposure to endocrine disruptors during periods of vulnerability, biological vulnerability, prenatal, puberty, and pregnancy can lay the groundwork for damage to breast tissue and potential further development of breast cancer. So we wanted to just draw your attention to that. And to mention that today. And we will hopefully be able to provide written comments, and I have a few other remarks, but we can do that bilaterally. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. No other comments in the room, it looks like? I'll make sure. We have plenty of time, so we're here to listen and engage. We don't have any emailed. You have one? Oh, go ahead.
So we received a comment online from Megan Kalsman from San Francisco Department of the Environment. My name is Megan Kalsman with the San Francisco Department of the Environment with the City and County of San Francisco. We strongly support the Safer Consumer Products Program looking at chemicals in nail products, since we have a Healthy Nail Salon Recognition Program where we help nail salons use safer products and practices. From a nail product ingredient review in 2017 of traditional and gel polishes used in San Francisco salons, we have seen isopropanol and butyl and ethyl acetate as a replacement solvent for toluene. Toluene was not found in gel polishes and was found in popular top coats in salons. We are concerned with looking at toluene as a single chemical and not taking a chemical class or functional class approach in order to avoid regrettable substitutions. We plan to submit written comment by April 1st.
Thank you, Dichle. Anything else? Nothing else in the room? Okay, well, absent any other comments, I'll just move right to concluding remarks. First, I want to thank everyone for being here and for tuning in online. As you know, our actions are really dependent on the quality of the information that we get. And so it's really important, and I'm pleased to see today that we have both industry advocacy here today, and I'll look forward to seeing your comments on our profile document. And I want to give you some sense of where we go from here. Once we get those comments, and I want to also acknowledge our other government partners here, CDPH. Thank you, Paula, for being here. We'll be taking that information along with the information that we hope to get through our sampling and analysis initiative, as well as the information call-in to manufacturers to fill data gaps, to answer some of the questions you raised today, to give us further insight on our perspective and our proposal. And once we do that, we'll finalize our priority product profile. That document then will be used as the key document in our rulemaking to list the priority product. And what happens then is we take that document and it undergoes a formal external scientific peer review. It's just what it says, it's external, goes through the office of the UC president. And that will address the fundamental criteria questions we have. Have we documented that this priority product meets our criteria? Once that's completed, we'll take into account what that peer review finds and make any adjustments or changes as necessary, and then move formally into rulemaking. At that point, there'll be another opportunity for everyone to comment, because there's a formal comment period on that. And we'll take those into account and finalize our listing regulation for the priority product, which at that point, once it becomes effective, is when the manufacturers that sell that specific product into California are then required to notify us that that's what they do, and to take one of the paths available to them in terms of alternatives analysis. So a lot going on. We're not there yet in terms of action, but this is a really important time for us to hear from all the stakeholders about the information they have that will inform us to make good decisions moving forward. Catherine, you had a question? Go ahead.
I know it's impossible to say, but do you have any sense of the timeline, like the sampling analysis, how long you think that's going to take?
Sure.
And then the review by the external body?
Sure. To give you some sense, the information in Callin process is we're developing our questions now, and we'll be working with our industry partners to make sure that we get to the right people who can answer those questions. And we anticipate their help in that regard and in answering those questions. I don't have a specific time frame for when that will be done. We're moving on that expeditiously. Concurrently, we are, as we speak, purchasing various products for testing. And we have, and that effort will go into late spring and summer, and then it'll sort of depend on what we find in that effort, how that feeds us back into our findings that we already know, and things if we find out new things that might inform us about how we might change our perspective. And then to rulemaking, as you know, that's a typically 8 to 10, 12-month process. And so we hope to get into that process certainly this year, if possible. But, you know, I alluded in my opening remarks to sort of the history, the trajectory of our work in nails, and it coincides with our trajectory for the whole program. And importantly, as you know, the first 3 priority products that we announced and listed, it took us, you know, about 5 years to get all of those adopted in regulation. It's a considerable amount of time and effort. But these were the first ones that we had ever done. And so internally and externally, we've all learned about how our process works. We've developed processes, checks and balances to make sure we're making good decisions. I'm very pleased and I'm thankful to my staff who've done a great job in building this process, that now that process will accelerate. Right now we have 4 potential priority products in the queue. This one, as well as detergents with nonphenol ethoxylates, carpets and rugs with per and polyfluorinated alkyl substances, paint and graffiti removers with NMP, and I said laundry detergents. Oh, and so those 3, and then this one. So that's 4. And we're actively pursuing those this calendar year, and so there's going to be a lot going on. But I do want to, the caveat is that this information collection process is really important. We may find that we missed something, or we may find some additional work that we need to do. We're not just going to push it through based on what we know today. So that just speaks to the importance of engagement, all of your engagement to give us good information. Andre, do you want to add anything?
I was just going to, process-wise, after the close of this comment period in the 1st of April, the team will be reviewing, digesting all the input that we receive, and then deciding what changes, if any, we need to make to the profile before it goes to the peer review. So essentially, we'll have, we'll take into consideration the input we get from all of you, refine what we've written, and then that is the version that goes to the external reviewers. And then they typically, it's a few months between initiating the request and getting results. 4 months. 3
to 4 months. It's not that process we don't really control, but it's been pretty
So
smooth.
if you just kind of do the arithmetic, it's, later in the year before we get to rulemaking.
Right. Thank you, Andre.
I'd also like to say that, the recommendations that were given regarding all the other chemicals that were investigated are soft recommendations and are subject to change based on any new information that is presented to us or that we uncover along the way.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So again, I do want to take a moment to thank all my staff who've worked hard to get us to where we are today and on this profile and this process today. We're really blessed to have really outstanding staff who are really committed. And it's a group of scientists and engineers who are curious, mission-driven, and happy to engage with all of you on the substance of your concerns and ours. So please take the opportunity to follow up with us. And again, thank you all. We'll look forward to the next step of this process. And with that, we'll close today's workshop and a safe journey back to your homes. Thank you.